When I was about 12, my great-uncle John came from Ukraine to visit us in Canada. He had a lot of stories, but this was the one that stood out. In the late 1960s, John was travelling by train from his village to another to visit family. He had to change trains at one point, and was dropped off at what amounted to a platform and a hut in the middle of nowhere. There was no one else at the station, and other than a dirt road that led off into the surrounding woods, there was nothing there. He waited for some time, but no train came. It was winter, and getting colder and darker, and just about the time he started worrying about having a place to stay and some food to eat, an old woman appeared out of the twilight. She asked if he was waiting for such and such a train, and when he said he was, she said it wouldn't be along until the following day. She asked if he needed a bed for the night, and offered him a meal and a room at her place, which she said was about an hour's walk from the station. Lodging with locals was more or less the standard when travelling in this part of the USSR, and Great-Uncle John wasn't looking forward to a hungry night on a cold platform, so he was glad to accept her offer. He took his suitcase, and they set off together down the dark road into the forest. It was more than an hour away, more like 2, and by the time they arrived at the woman's small 2-story house, John was tired and hungry. They went inside, and the woman lit some oil lamps and warmed some borscht for them. It was the first time John was able to see the woman clearly, and he was a bit startled to realize that the old woman was actually a man. Not wanting to pry, and too tired to care, John finished his soup and asked where he would be sleeping. She led him up the stairs to a tiny room with a window that contained a single bed and nothing else. He thanked her, they said goodnight, and she closed the door. Then she locked it, leaving him in the dark. Somewhat creeped out by this, John called to her, but she didn't answer, and he heard nothing. Figuring he would deal with it in the morning, and that she had probably done it by mistake, John set his suitcase down and laid on the bed, deciding to make the best of it and get some sleep. Before he could fall asleep though, he felt the urge to pee, and got out of bed, hoping to find a chamber pot or something he could pee in. He got onto his hands and knees, and began to feel under the bed in the darkness, thinking that's where the pot would be if there was one. Instead, he found a body. Great-Uncle John went right to the window to see if he could exit the room that way. It was nailed shut. He knew that if he remained in the room, he was probably a dead man. But if he broke the window and tried to get out that way, there was a good chance that the old woman, and who knows who else was there, would hear him and come into the room before he could get away. So he did the only thing he could do. He pulled the body from under the bed, heaved it onto the mattress, and covered it with the blanket. Then he got under the bed and waited. Sure enough, about an hour later, he heard footsteps coming slowly up the stairs, and then towards the room. The lock clicked, and the knob turned slowly. In the gloom, John saw someone move towards the bed. He heard several terrific and sickening thuds. The person had bashed the body on the bed with a large crowbar, which they had then dropped on the floor right in front of John. There was silence. Then the person went out of the room, and the door was shut again. The footsteps went down the stairs, and then, once more, silence. John moved out from under the bed, took the crowbar, and was able to slowly pry the window open. He didn't say, but I imagine he was shitting bricks the entire time. When the window was up, he threw his suitcase out, then dove through himself, not caring what was below him, only worried about what was behind. he landed without too much injury and began to run into a field behind the house towards some lights in the far distance. It turned out to be a highway with some military and transport trucks on it, and John was able to get a ride to another village where he could catch a train. He didn't bother reporting what happened to the authorities, since at that time in the USSR, there was a distinct chance he would be the one who got into trouble. He just thanked God that he escaped, and decided that the next time he travelled to visit relatives, he'd take another way. I often read Reddit when I'm bored at work. I love reading all these let's not meet stories, and figure it's time to post my own. So, my mum left the picture when I was 3. She literally picked me up one day and just walked out, so for a long time it was just my dad and I. I'm a male, and at the time my dad met Tammy I was 13, and at the time I was small for my age. I still had my baby fat. I was, and still am, a nerd. So is my dad, and we shared a love of Star Wars, comic books, and science fiction. My dad decided he needed to meet someone. He was lonely, and I thought it would be nice to have a mother figure. This was before online dating, and there were still personals in the paper. My dad filled out an ad, and it wasn't long before he met Tammy. I remember him telling me about her, and how happy he looked. They dated for a month before my dad figured it was getting serious, and he wanted to introduce me to her, so my dad decided to take us out for dinner and a movie. I remember my grandma helping me get dressed, and I was super nervous to meet her. Tammy seemed nice at first, but even at that age, I could sense something was off. We went to Sizzler's for dinner, and my dad told me to order whatever I liked. He then excused himself to the bathroom. I smiled at Tammy, and went to say something, and she cuts me off, telling me my dad's been letting me eat whatever I wanted and that I'm a fat little piggy. She demonstrated this by actually making pig noises. I was crushed. I mean, honestly, I wasn't very heavy. Maybe a little chubby, but not obese like some children are today. My dad didn't actually let me eat whatever I wanted. But anyways, back to the story. She ignored me until my dad came back, and then played nice. I, for my dad's sake, faked being nice to her. I wanted to tell my dad what she had said to me, but I didn't want to disappoint him or upset him. My dad was, and still is, my best friend. I hoped and prayed he would realize what a bitch she was, and come to his senses, but sadly he didn't. They dated steadily, and when I was 15, Tammy moved in. I finally lost my baby fat, and grew a good foot or 2. My dad is 6'3", so it wasn't surprising I shot up to almost 6 feet by age 15. Puberty kicked in too, and my voice was doing that weird cracking thing. I made it a point to avoid Tammy. I went to school, came home, and stayed in my room doing homework, waiting for my dad to get home. However, she started in on me most days as soon as I walked in. She'd always find something. I was a loser, I was stupid, just cruel, mean things. The few times I told my dad, he insisted we all needed to adjust, so I just decided I could put up with her for 3 more years for my dad's sake, and then I was out of there. The next 3 years sucked. Her insults got meaner. She'd also do things like put glass, pieces of paper, and sand in my food. I started refusing to eat whatever she cooked. I was terrified she'd poison me. It was around this time that my dad and her got married. Graduation came, and I was so relieved I was set to enlist in the army. I planned on being in basic by July, but of course, she had to try and ruin that too. My recruiter got a call from someone saying I smoked pot and did drugs. Thankfully, I passed my drug test, but I know it was her. One night, before I left for boot camp, my dad had a huge party for me. She had tried to cancel it earlier by claiming she was sick, but by that point, my dad had already invited most of my friends and family and wasn't going to cancel. She pouted the entire time. I started to see that my dad was starting to see past her facade. Let's skip a few more years, and I get leave. I've been deployed twice now, and I hadn't seen my dad in 22 months, so I was dying to see him. He had told me in previous conversations that their marriage was pretty much over. She wasn't only controlling and verbally abusive, but a few weeks prior, she had knocked him out with a cast iron skillet. He had given her an ultimatum of a month to get out, or he was going to throw her crap out. The night I got in, it was late. My dad picked me up and we came home. Supposedly, she was gone. She had started moving her crap into her sister's house and was pretty much staying there most nights. Dad and I eat, and we go to bed. Around 1 in the morning, I feel my bed move. I'm exhausted, and figure it's my dad's dog, Caesar, a German Shepherd. That's when I feel hands go around my neck, and my soldier instincts kick in. I flip the intruder over and subdue them. My dad runs in and flips on the light. He's got his gun out. Surprise, surprise, it's my step monster. Dad calls the police, files a restraining order, serves her with divorce papers. A lot more shit happens, such as her destroying my dad's new Mercedes, but I won't bore you with the details. What matters is that they divorced, and I never have to see that bitch again. So I'm a male nurse at a large hospital in San Francisco. I work in the ER, and as is custom Thanksgiving night, it was very busy. Now, my wife is also a nurse at the same hospital. She works in labour and delivery. Between babies being born left and right, and the people coming into the ER, we hadn't had a chance to take a break together as we try to do every shift. So, when she called me, I figured it was to say she wanted to meet up for a bite to eat in the cafeteria. When I answered, I heard in the background a male voice screaming profanities, and my wife, who's fluent in Spanish, trying to calm this guy down. She told me their pager wasn't working, and they needed security stat. I quickly hung up and called for security, told my fellow nurses what was going on, and ran for labour and delivery, worried sick about my wife. I ran almost square smack dab into this visibly angry man. He wasn't huge, but he definitely worked out, and not at the gym. He was covered in prison tattoos, and he was obviously a gangbanger. I work out regularly, but I knew this guy could kick my ass. He looked at me, gave me this sick grin, and started heading towards me, spouting off in Spanish. I don't speak fluent Spanish, but what I could understand scared the shit out of me. I back up as fast as I can. I start buzzing the door to the ER frantically for them to let me in. This guy's literally a foot away from me when the door opens and I'm pulled into safety by a doctor. Gangbanger punches the door a few times, makes a dragging sign across his throat while grinning at both of us. Next thing I know, the police rush into the corridor he's in, and it takes 2 security officers and 2 cops to subdue this dude. I finally make it to my wife, who, thankfully, was shaken up but unhurt. She explained to me what happened. A young girl of only 14 came in. She had a high fever, was vomiting, and had a distended belly. The banger claimed that he was her brother, and that they needed to cut her open to get the baby out. They did an ultrasound, and to their horror, they realized she wasn't pregnant, but had bags of drugs in her stomach. It's very common for drug mules to bring over young women from Mexico carrying drugs that way. Homeboy freaked out when they informed him his sister needed emergency surgery, and no, he wasn't getting his drugs. Thankfully, the girl survived, but the sad thing is, she'll most likely be deported when she recovers. A real scumbag, that gangster. So I'm really freaked out right now. I'm in my late 30s, and I live in a home with my brother, who works in personal security, and my fiancé as well. I always feel really safe, because my brother is home at nights, and he's armed to the teeth, and we also have a pit bull who is very protective of us. So my brother recently took a temporary high-clearance security job in Arizona, and he's being put up in a hotel out there. Before he left, he showed my fiancé and I how to properly operate one of his guns, just in case. We live in one of the safest towns in America. Nothing bad hardly happens here. It's like Mayberry. But with all of this recent clown bullshit and the increase of drugs, it's better to be safe than sorry. So this begins 2 nights ago. My fiancé goes to bed early because he has to be up at 5 o'clock most mornings for work. We're in bed, me, him and the dog, and I have my headphones on, and I'm watching something on my tablet. I snore really bad, so my fiancé wears earplugs. Around 11:30, my dog jolts out of a sound sleep and starts growling. She goes over to the window in our bedroom and starts growling even louder, so I get up to check. I look outside, and there's a man staring at me. He's skinny and old, grizzled grey hair, unkempt beard, vacant eyes. He looks at me and smiles, and I about lost it. Now my dog's straight up foaming at the mouth and barking. This finally wakes up my fiancé, and he comes over to see what's going on. The man sees I'm not alone and takes off. We called the cops, and they show up and start looking around. They find the guy's backpack. He has a notebook with my name and address in it, and a diagram of my freaking house. They find beef jerky, sleeping pills, presumably for my dog, scissors, twine, electrical tape, condoms, and a rusted knife. They told me they'd be on the lookout for him. We installed cameras all over the house, and my brother cut his work trip short until they catch the guy. But today, I started getting hang-ups from an unknown caller, and I'm freaking out even more. Hey guys, Lazy here, and thank you very much for listening. I thought this was a really nice collection of stories actually. That one about the Ukrainian uncle's now one of my all-time favourites, I think. I read hundreds of stories, and let me tell you, not many rival that one. But hey, let me know what you guys thought about it and all of the other ones down below. And while you're down there, why not do some naughty things with that like button? Oh yeah. I actually have some unique and interesting video ideas lined up for the next couple of uploads, so keep your eyes peeled for those. And as always, Lazy Legion, you stay spooky. And remember, the best things happen in the dark.